the crowd, the answer is I'm the sick one. That's actually correct. Now, that's opposite to what we're taught. We're taught that symptoms tell us if we're healthy or sick. But what we need to understand is I ingested a toxin and I was so sick that I could not remove it. Where everybody else ingested the toxin and they removed it. So removing the toxin is healthy. That's what we want to understand is what our body actually doing a normal process, or is this a problem where we've gone past the adaptability of the body? When we understand this, we can see that there are different things that commonly happen to us that will make things get worse. So take that same information and then look at what happens. I have a fever. The normal response by a lot of people in this allopathic or symptom world is make fever go away. Now, if you just go back 60 years, the answer was make fever higher. So what we want to understand is what is the fever's job? It actually speeds up reactions. It makes our body work quicker. It makes the cells move quicker, as well as, most people aren't aware, the bacteria and viruses that affect us can only live in a very small range, roughly a 3 to 4 degree temperature range. So if you get too hot, they'll actually start dying. So the fever kills the bacteria or virus. The fever speeds up the immune system to react. The fever also allows the white blood cells to work quicker. And the fever will drive all the energy into protection. Now, what I want you to understand is that when you're in a sick state, say a fever, bacterial, viral infection, do you think that is relaxation or fighting? So is it fight or flight, or is it feed or breed? Any ideas? It is fight or flight. So when we get sick, what happens? Do our hands get cold or warm? Cold. So all the stuff I talk about when you're in a stress response is going to happen when you're fighting off a bacteria or virus. The blood is going to move from your frontal cortex to your brainstem. The blood is going to move more from your stomach to your muscles to get ready to fight. The heart rate is going to go up. Breathing rate is going to go up. You're going to get warm. You're going to get tight muscles. Literally, your body is going to go into protection. And that's healthy and that's normal. So what I'm showing you here is different adaptations to the environments that we live in. And what I want to get into is the actual safety pin cycle itself. But before I get there, have we or anybody we known ever felt like they're stuck in, let's say, anxiety, tight muscles, gut issues, let's say a headache that is induced by alcohol or gluten or dairy or different things like that? And what we need to understand is those symptoms just tell us that the cycle has not completed. So it doesn't mean you're broken. It just means you haven't completed the whole cycle. So the cycle, how it works is when the brain recognizes stress, it turns on stress. And the stress response turns on. So the brain will be here. And the body will be here. And how they communicate determines how you're healing. So you got brain, body. Now, if your brain perceives stress, it's going to tell your body to go into stress. And if your body is stressed, it will tell your brain to keep the stress response going. If we do this long enough, you can actually ingrain it where you get stuck in these states for long periods of time. The normal completion of the cycle, though, is the brain perceives stress isn't there anymore, tells the body to relax, the body relaxes, and then it tells the brain, and then you dial down. You go more parasympathetic or relaxation. So you have to understand your physiology, your body is a response to the environment that you live in. If you want to, I'll give you an example of this. If you want to induce a stress response, expose your body to something stressful. Example, how many people like watching horror films? or horror movies. I don't, but we do have some patients that do. And when they do, understand that horror movie is literally inducing the stress response. So what happens? Your heart starts beating faster, you start breathing quicker, your hands get really clammy, you get tight. And what's happening, and what they like though, is when the scare happens, you'll get an adrenaline rush, which can give you a dopamine hit. So it's that hit, and you're getting high off the actual movie. But what we want to understand is that if we chronically do this over and over again, we can actually pattern ourselves to get stuck in stress. Then what happens is the body here rebuilds itself. Do we remember how long it takes for the body to rebuild itself? In months. 9. So 9 months to rebuild itself. What we want to understand is that's for everything. There are other tissues that rebuild quicker. Like, don't get me wrong. So, example, tongue, roughly 8 to 12 hours. Gut, the same, 6 to 12 hours. Bone, roughly 2 months. Liver, 3 months. Blood, 18 days. So you're just rebuilding all these things. How do you think we're going to rebuild our body if our brain is stuck in stress? Are we going to allocate energy to healing, or are we going to allocate energy to protection? Protection, right? So if our brain is stuck in stress because we're worrying about something the boss is going to say, if we're stuck in stress because we're worrying about something with our spouse, if we're stuck in stress because we turn on that little box that tells us what to think. Like, literally all of this, if we stay here long enough, will literally tell our body to remake itself in a protective state. And when those cells are remade in that state, they will actually change how they perceive the world. So what that means is, let's say we're spiking adrenaline and cortisol and glucose. And we look at the body cells themselves, and we're just going to do one cell. Cells have receptors on the outside of them, and those receptors are up or down regulated by the amount of information we're sending to it. And what I want you to understand is your receptors on each cell are triggered by hormones, are triggered by neurotransmitters. So let's say it's just cortisol, and we start really producing a lot of cortisol. Each cell will start producing more cortisol receptors. So have you ever heard that person's addicted to stress? This is literally what I'm explaining. Is that as you get stressed, your body becomes hyper aware of low amounts of stress and responds. So if you take it away, your body will literally start craving it. So this is, I don't know why I said that. This is, I don't know why I did that. The definition of an addiction is you responding to your body, not your brain telling your body what to do. So if you're addicted to, say, alcohol, the tissues in your body are addicted. They literally crave, and they tell the body through that cycle where you have brain here and body here. The body will keep sending signals saying, we need alcohol, we need alcohol, we need alcohol, we need alcohol. And unless we can rewire the brain to say, no, we don't, it will give in. And this is a chemical addiction. But you can have the same addiction to the stress response with glucose spiking. Then you're somebody, if you're addicted to, say, that glucose spike, then you're somebody who can be gaining weight really easily. Yes?
Do you think about these, like about manifesting, like speaking to yourself, speaking things that make your subconscious and your body relax?
So the statement is, what do you think about manifesting? I would take that to continual prayer or continual self-positive talk is where I would go with that. And what I'll let you know is, when we're talking about our body itself, we can change by positive self-talk or positive negative talk. When we're talking about the environment around us, it gets a little bit harder. So if you have chronic positive talk to yourself, you're going to change your physiology. You're going to produce less cortisol. You're going to produce less insulin. You're going to have less of the chronic stress hormones and inflammation happening. But if you're chronically negative on yourself, you will produce more inflammation. You will, and because you're producing more inflammation, turn on your genetic predispositions. What does that mean? Disease. So the more inflammation you have, the more disease you can turn on. The less inflammation, the less stress you have, the less disease you turn on. So when you're sitting there and you're like, okay, so you're telling me that how I talk to myself will affect my physical body? Yes. To the point that the belief system you have can actually turn on or turn off disease. In the medical community, we have this thing is called iatrogenic disease. That's a big word for you thought it into existence. So I'll give you an example of this. When I was in college, I worked at Coca-Cola as a quality assurance guy. So I literally tested the pop to make sure that it had enough sugar and CO2 and no bacteria and all that stuff. And I'm testing it all the time. And it was Friday and I didn't want to be there anymore. Now, I had been ingrained in my whole life that you can't just leave work. You can't lie. So I literally told myself that I was sick for 3 hours until I vomited. And then I left. And within 10 minutes of leaving the place, I was fine. So what I'm showing you is you can literally induce a stress response into your body to the point where you can cause sickness to show up. You can cause symptoms to show up because you can induce those chemical reactions. Yes?
So conversely, you can get those symptoms to disappear.
Conversely, if you are strong enough with your frontal lobe, you can, with exception, as long as ultimately, yes, but it depends on how much time, energy you're going to spend on it. Are you going to spend 8 hours a day literally just visualizing putting your body back together? Then you can do changes like that. I have a colleague that did that. What happened with him was his name is Joe Dispenza. He was riding his bike, got hit in a triathlon, got hit by a Mack truck, shattered his back. They told him he had to fuse his back. He said no. Went to his buddy's house. They put him on an inversion table, and he literally visualized for 8 to 12 hours a day of rebuilding his spine. And in 3 months, the whole thing was rebuilt, and he had a minor deviation in his lower back. So yes, it's possible. But this guy, the other point you need to understand, this guy has what's called a photographic and audiographic memory. He could literally sit in class, not take notes, and replay everything that happened for each class. So his memory works a little bit different than us as well. But yes, you can speak health into your body or speak sickness into your body. So that's why if we look biblically, life and death is from the tongue. And yes, you can build up or break down people, 100%. If we go back to the cells, though, they become addicted to whatever we're chronically exposing them to. So each time they're remade, they'll make more, let's say, cortisol receptors. And if the cortisol level isn't high enough, they literally send craving signals to the brain to say, make more cortisol, which means make stress response happen. If we remake ourselves, then every 9 months, we'll make all the tissue cells and we can make it with less receptors. You can literally repattern your tissue. But this isn't a quick overnight type thing. This is literally rebuilding your whole body. If you have a brain stem that's stuck in stress, it's really hard because you have to stay on point with your thought process the whole time to downregulate it. So the brainstem is the fight-flight response. So it's hard to do that because you have to literally, and this is what I was talking about Mr. Dispenza, is you have to stay on that for hours a day to be able to do it. What we do is go, well, why don't we just pattern it through neuro adjustments and laser to get it to downregulate, and then you'll make your body correctly that way. Does that make sense? So when we look at this, what I'm showing you is your body is remaking itself. And that's what the cycle is. Stress turns on, systems turn off, stress turns off, brain tells systems to turn back on, and it continually keeps feeding back to itself. That's why it's called the safety pin cycle. Now, when we look at this, what we need to understand is there are different systems at play here. I'm going to give you an example of one of the ones that I run into all the time. And it literally can set you up for failure or health based on the one thing that you'll do here. So we look at the brain, and then we're going to look at the intestine and the stomach. I'm not very good at art. So let's make it even easier. We're going to do the stomach and intestine. All right, so this is the stomach. This is the intestine. What's the job of the stomach? Any ideas? Break down food, right? Specifically protein. That's the stomach's job. So a lot of acid to break down protein, and there's certain things it can absorb. It can absorb butter and alcohol there as well. So its job is to stay really, 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 really acidic to break down protein, as well as, do you know it's a defense organ too? Because it'll kill the bacteria and viruses if you're acidic enough. Nothing can get into your system. So the pH of the stomach is roughly around like 2. So it's insanely acidic. Worse than battery acid. But its job is to only turn on when the brain tells it to, and then to turn off. So have we all heard, well, your stomach is too acidic and that's why you get heartburn? That's actually a lie. It's too acidic at one time. It's not acidic at another time. So we need to understand the whole system and what's going on. So how the system works with your stomach is there are little receptor cells in the small intestine right past the stomach that literally feed into the brain and tell the brain to make the stomach acid stop. So when you eat food and your stomach acid is really, really, really acidic and you break down food, then the food passes down into the stomach, past the stomach into the small intestine. Small intestine talks to the brain. Brain says, we don't need any more stomach acid. And then the stomach acid turns off if you're working correctly. What happens with people is if their stomach is not acidic enough, then what will happen is they eat food, it isn't acidic enough, it doesn't stimulate these cells, and the acid just keeps being produced. Because it's a feedback mechanism. The mechanism literally says, you're made enough acidic food, brain, turn it off, and then it will turn it off, and then no more stomach acid. But if you don't get really acidic, then the acid just sits there and keeps going and going and going because the little cells are not told to turn the stomach off. That feedback loop needs to work correctly. So what do we see happen in Western medicine? Well, you're producing too much acid, that's correct, at the wrong time, and not enough acid at the right time. So the answer is, let's give you a drug that stops you from producing acid. So that's what they'll do. It's a proton pump inhibitor. They'll have different names or take a bunch of Tums or whatever it is. If this doesn't have enough acid, what's going to happen? Are bacteria and viruses going to be able to get through your stomach now? Yeah, and they're going to get into your bowels. There's another thing that nobody looks at because they're only looking at the stomach symptom. Down here, your bowel, it is created by the pH. That's what bacteria is going to grow in there. So if it becomes alkaline, all the bad bacteria grow. So if it becomes low acidity or not as acidic, all the bad bacteria grow. If it's acidic enough, only the good bacteria can grow. What do the good bacteria produce? Neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine that make your brain work correctly. What also they produce? This is the point that a lot of people miss, is the bacteria in the gut actually digest and remove 50% of the toxins in your body. So if you have the wrong pH in your gut, now you're not going to have the neurotransmitters. You can get anxiety because of a stomach acid problem. Isn't that crazy? You can have chronic pain because of a stomach acid problem. Go ahead.
How can you tell you have a stomach acid problem other than maybe anxiety or pain? Or because I imagine there's correlation, causation.
So the simple answer is you can do a fecal test and see what bacteria are growing. Go ahead, yeah. Oh, the question is, how can you tell if you have a stomach acid problem? And the answer is you can do a fecal test to see what bacteria are growing. You can also do a simple test to see if your stomach's working correctly, and this is the apple cider vinegar test I do with you guys. So you literally take apple cider vinegar, drink it, and if you don't get pain in your tummy, you're probably okay. Go ahead.
a baking soda thing too?
The baking soda test, yes. So the other test we had is a baking soda test. You drink so much baking soda, and if you react correctly, you'll burp because you have enough stomach acid. And if you don't burp within 5 minutes, it tells me you don't have enough stomach acid. So these are all ways to test to see if you have stomach acid. Or we can do expensive labs, but I'd rather do the cheap and easy ones.
How much baking-
How much baking soda? If I remember correctly, it's a couple tablespoons as well. You take it on an empty stomach, and then do you get the burps? Yes, you're good. Now, understand when people take baking soda to fix their stomach, it's exactly the same as taking Tums or a PPI. You're literally taking out the stomach acid and setting yourself up for a whole destructive process. So the drug that literally makes me the most angry, besides statins, is stomach acid drugs, because it sets the whole system up to fall apart. As soon as you get a person on this, they are going to have chronic depression and anxiety. They're going to have overwhelm of different bacteria that grow, because in your small intestine and large intestine, specifically your large, that's where you make what are called short chain fatty acids that literally feed all the other good bacteria to grow correctly. So now you're going to be prone to like yeast infections, kidney infections. You're going to be prone to like different reproductive organ infections. Like you're literally just going to get all these issues. So the feedback mechanism is the body's set up to work correctly. You make a lot of acidity, break down the protein. It tells the cells say, you're good, turn off the acidity, you're good. But if you don't have enough, and the number one cause usually that we deal with of why I don't have enough acidity is, let's say you're drinking things that will inhibit it, like club soda or any sparkling waters. That will actually inhibit it. Or you're taking Tums or different things like that, and you inhibit it enough, then you can get what's called an H. pylori infection. And if you're like, well, how do I get that? If you eat out anywhere, you're exposed to it. So what we need to understand is if you're acidic enough, you're good. So what do I usually do for most patients? We pump it full of acid and give it digestive enzyme to make sure it kills everything right away. That's that digestive enzyme we give you to make sure the whole system's working correctly. And then the feedback loop will work correctly, and then it will start making more acidity and kill off the bad bacteria and grow the good. So the whole system is just based on pH. So the problem is if you have a low acidic stomach and you're taking probiotics, doesn't matter. They won't do anything. On a side note, if you take a probiotic and it has to be refrigerated, it's junk. It will never get by your stomach then. So you're wasting money. Just FYI, if you're like, well, it's a special probiotic and it's in the refrigerated section and the person there told me it was really, yeah, I'm glad it's there, but understand your stomach is so acidic, it will literally kill it. So it can't be that weak. If you get one that can be shelf stable, that's the stuff that will get past your stomach. We sell one like that, but I'm just giving you ways to understand here is that, yes, it may be a probiotic, but it's literally eating the whole thing up. Make sense? So what do we want to look at here? If it's acidic enough, we get the feedback loop, everything works better. If we don't get the feedback loop, we get sick. This is just an example of every other system in your body. You name an organ and it works on the exact same pathway. Maybe not with the receptor cells here, but they're at different parts of your body. Say it's like your heart and how fast it beats. Say it's your digestion, how quickly it excretes. Say it's your kidney, say it's your liver. All these different systems have feedback loops, muscles, blood flow, all these things. And the feedback loop is all driven by the brain. But if you stay in stress for too long, you cannot heal. If you stay in stress for too long, you become acidic and you can end up with chronic pain syndromes. You can end up with digestive issues. You can end up with anxiety and depression, blah, 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 all these different problems. So what we're going to talk about is a colleague's patient, and I'm going to call this guy Joe. And why we're going to talk about this is Joe came to my colleague in Arizona, and he just came and he showed up with low back pain. And he was getting care, but when he came in, he had low back pain to the point where he was taking some painkillers. So he's taking Vicodin. And he got care for a while, and he did pretty good. He got to the point where he wasn't using the Vicodin at all. But then he moved. And when he moved, 30, 40 minutes away, and he decided, I don't want to drive that far. It's too hard. I don't want to do that. So he stopped getting the care that was helping him. And this was normal chiropractic care. This was not the stuff that we do. This is normal care that helps fix the brain just by the adjustment. And what happened with this fellow is the pain came back. And then what happened is Joe started taking Vicodin again. And this is where it gets sad. He had been taking so much Vicodin that when he was driving to work one day, he passed out. And when he woke up, there was 2 people that were dead because he crashed into them. So I'm telling you this because we may think that, oh, it's just a little pain. Oh, it's just a little stomach issue. But him not being in pain means that he was not intoxicated because of the medication he's on. My goal is to help us help our city so that I know when I'm driving down the road that I'm not having people that are intoxicated on meds crashing into people. And for Joe, because of that pain and because of his decision to take it, he's actually going to be in jail for 20 years now because it was manslaughter and 2 people are dead because of that decision. But how many people do we know that are taking pills and they don't think anything of it, but they don't know how intoxicating it is for them? So my ask and my prayer is for you is that at the end of this month, we have our Patient Appreciation Day. So do you know anybody that is not living at optimal? Do you know anybody that says they have a problem? And my hope and my prayer would be is let them know they can get a full exam, and that's for that $20 deal. And then they're not going to end up getting addicted to things. They're not going to end up having these things because they're going to be able to have a choice. Go
Is
ahead.
it that whole week then?
It's the whole week. Yes, it's
30?
the end of March, the 30th, 31st, and the actual PAD day where you get the food and all that stuff is the 2nd. But it's that whole week. And so if you have somebody that comes to mind, be the light for them. Tell them this is something you can do to show you answers because we know you haven't had this tested before. I want to thank you guys for being here. Please take that chance to help a friend or family member.